Welcome, folks, to Learn Law. We are going to be looking at occupiers liability today, and we're going to focus on the AO1. So this is the AO1 for lawful visitors, and then we will do unlawful visitors, and then we will look at AO3. So 3 videos in total. So lawful visitors under occupiers liability. Okay, point number 1. I would talk about what an occupier is. So who is an occupier? Well, the case of Wheat says that an occupier is somebody who is in possession and control of the premises. And there can be more than one person in possession and control. So quite straightforward, simple point. The second point that I would look at in the AO1 is what is meant by the term premises. So we know what an occupier is. We now need to talk about what premises are, not defined properly in the Occupiers Liability Act. Great. So premises, section 1(3)(a) of the Occupiers Liability Act 1957 says premises means a fixed or movable structure, including any vessel, vehicle or aircraft. Now, this includes things like houses, offices, buildings, vehicles, but also more unusual things like lifts and ladders. The case that I would remember, though, is Tomlinson. So this said that a lake is classed as premises, and that comes up quite a lot in scenario questions. So a lake, Tomlinson. Okay, the third point, very straightforward. I would just say that lawful visitors are dealt with under the Occupiers Liability Act 1957. Point number 4, what is a lawful visitor? Well, a lawful visitor, it means, and we're looking at adults here, it means that you're allowed to be there, you've invited somebody into your house, they are a lawful visitor, or they could have statutory authority, like the police have statutory authority to enter some premises, or people fixing your boiler, things like that. Now, point number 5, section 2(2) of the Occupiers Liability Act 1957 says that an adult visitor must be reasonably safe in using the premises for the purpose that they've been invited. So I'll say that again. An adult visitor must be reasonably safe in using the premises for the purpose that they have been invited. Now, interestingly, it's the word reasonably safe. So point number 6 is the case of Laverton. And Laverton just reiterates the fact that the occupier only has to take reasonable care. The visitor, the lawful visitor, does not have to be completely safe. And you can add in cases such as Cole, where she trapped her foot in a hole where a maypole used to be, and the court said that it was a pure accident. So you don't have to make something completely safe, just reasonably safe. Okay, point number 7 is to do with children who are lawful visitors. Now, section 2, subsection 3 of the Act says that you have to be prepared for children to be less careful than adults. So premises must be reasonably safe, again, not completely safe, but reasonably safe for a child of that age. And there are a couple of cases you could mention here. You could talk about Taylor, that was the 7-year-old who ate poisonous berries, and the council knew that children did that, and they did nothing to fence off the hedge, I guess. So Taylor is saying that you've got to take extra care when children are involved. The case of Pips, however, is saying that if a child is very young, then the parents should actually be looking after them. So in Pips, you had a 5 and a 7-year-old who fell down a trench, and the council were not liable because the parents should have been looking after them. So you could put that point as point number 8. You could talk about Pips and Taylor. Okay, point number 9 is to do with tradespeople. So the occupier does owe a duty of care to people like builders, chimney sweeps and so on. However, section 2(3)(b) says that tradespeople must guard against any special risks. So in the case of Rolls versus Nathan, 2 chimney sweeps died after inhaling carbon monoxide, and the occupiers were not liable because the sweeps should have been aware of the dangers. And then the final point to do with lawful visitors, quite a few kind of subsections of this point, but this is to do with independent contractors. So under section 2, subsection 4 of the OLA 1957, there are 3 requirements. So it must be reasonable for the occupier to have given the work to the contractor must be competent to carry out the task, and the occupier must check that the work has been done properly. Okay, so that first point, it must be reasonable for the occupier to have contracted the work out. That's the case of Hasseldine. So the more complicated and specialist the work, the more reasonable it is for you to contract that work out. The second point, the contractor must be competent to carry out the task, and this is Bottomley and the cricket club. So the club hired a stunt team to do fireworks, and they used the claimant as well. The claimant didn't have any experience, the stunt went wrong, claimant was injured, and the club was liable because they didn't check that the contractor was qualified. And then the third and final point, the occupier must check that the work has been done properly. So in the case of Woodward, the snow was cleared off the steps of a school, but they were still icy and a child was injured. The occupiers were liable as they hadn't checked the work was done properly. Okay, so that is the AO1 for lawful visitors. Watch the next video for unlawful visitors.